we're basically mastering credibility. When people come to television as a guest, they're looking for authoritative reach. I interview subject matter experts, usually authors, coaches, and business owners, and they're trying to set themselves apart as credible authorities in their space. Well, when it comes to being considered believable, having credibility, we're going to look at 5 proven hacks to really establish that credibility in your niche. Now, I'm specifying in your niche, because if I am a swimming champion, or like Tiger Woods, he's a golf champion, but now he's trying to play basketball, he's not necessarily going to have as much credibility in the basketball space. That doesn't mean he can't build it, and there won't be some pour over of those who like him in golf that will follow him into basketball. But for the most part, when you're establishing credibility in your niche, you want to be seen as an authority, as credible in this space. This is what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to be covering a couple things. I am who I am. I am a Christian. I'm not a Christian on Sundays and then something else every other day of the week. My identity is that I'm a Christ follower. So it follows me in everything that I do. If you at least can receive the Bible as a book of wisdom, then at least that part of the presentation today will be okay for you. If that is going to be a problem, you can just exit now, because that's where I'm starting. It sets the foundation for everything that I do. We will also look at some peer-reviewed research. As some of you may know, I'm a doctoral candidate. I'm pursuing a doctor's in strategic leadership, and my research interest is in influential reach. So I am actively looking at peer-reviewed research, and I share them with you in this weekly publication, because I am not just talking off the top of my head, and I am sharing with you research concepts, because when we look at what the data says, it does have more impact than things just being anecdotal, something that's, one-off thing. All right, so we're going to look at 5 specific things today: expertise, recognition, social proof, brand reputation, and what the media says. Now, when it matters the most, in court especially, what the jury thinks can make a difference to your life, whether they think you're guilty or not, whether they believe you or not. If your life was on the line and you had to convince a jury of your peers that you were telling the truth, how believable are you coming across? It doesn't only matter on the witness stand. It matters everywhere. When I'm making these videos, if you don't believe what I'm saying, if you think, oh, she's chatting foolishness, you're going to just tune out. So believability goes across all sorts of things when you're talking to your friends, your partner, your clients, your prospects, people that you're just randomly meeting. If they get a sense they can't trust you, if you don't come across as believable, you're done. It's as simple as that. So when you are believable, trust builds up. For some people, it takes a while before they're willing to trust you. And there's some people who just emanate an energy, or I don't know what it is, but you feel believable right out the gate. And for some people, whether it's their own personality and their past experiences or what, but sometimes they need time for you to earn their trust. But at the end of the day, if you are coming off as unbelievable, it's not going to work, because trust creates influence. And that's really the crux of everything that is being talked about here. We're looking at influential reach and all the things that impact influential reach, and trust and believability are huge in that component. So how are you coming across? Could you convince a jury of your peers that you are telling the truth, that you are believable in what you say, which would make you credible and an authority? Now, the Bible says, I have 2 verses for you today. Philippians 2:22, but ye know the proof of him, that as a son with the Father, he hath served with me in the gospel. I'm not a theologian. I'm not trying to unpack this verse for you today. I just wanted to highlight the part, he hath served with me in the gospel. This speaks to what others are saying of you. what others are saying of you, which is one of the reasons why a lot of people come to TV. When guests come to PSI TV, they're getting a trust transfer because I edify them. I build them up as a guest on my show. So what do others say about you? That is the big deal here. Okay. Also the thing about proof of him. What evidence is there? You know, well, I'll go into that another day. Proverbs 22 verse 1, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, a loving favor rather than silver and gold. Guys, wealth is fleeting, and it's certainly going to disappear very quickly if people don't think they can trust you, because nobody's going to open their wallet and slide their card if they think the deal is shady, if they think it's a scam, if they can't believe what you say in the offer that you have made, the promises you have made. I have been burnt several times by, sales pages. And when they have a guarantee on the page, I usually look for the guarantee, particularly because too many times I've realized that once I get behind the gate, once I've paid and gotten on the other side of the transaction, they don't live up to their promises, or worse, it's not what they said at all. And sometimes I'll see if your guarantee is worth anything or not, but there's some people that have had to fight for my money, even though they have a guarantee on their page. So at the end of the day, that is going to impact their reputation. It's going to impact their reputation. And a good name is to be chosen. That's intentional. You're going to go after building a good reputation before you worry about the money, because the money in my world is a result, not a reason. Money comes as a result of offering excellent service, of being credible and believable, of telling the truth, of being transparent. Because when I am all those things, people trust, and then they are willing to do transactions with me. And over time, money will be the result. But if you're going after the money, you're doing some kind of quick fix, something that may get you the money at that moment. Overall, your reputation is going to go before you. Right now, elections are built on reputation. And one of the strategies, whether you like him or not, is they are trashing the reputation of Donald Trump. And right now, the media seems to be switching its position on Joe Biden. The thing is that trashing someone's reputation is a strategy for the enemy or for the opposite side. Because if your name truly has a great reputation, then it won't matter. It won't matter to those who believe you, and it won't stand up for those who are trying to smear you. Now let's look at what our research has to say. Again, let me move this so you can see. Peer reviewed. Peer reviewed means more than one expert has looked at it in that space. So it's peer reviewed. And this was the research. Alibi believability. I use the court experience because this is where it sometimes matters the most. Sometimes your life is on the line when it comes to what you say in court and how believable you are. So this research was very useful for me for this purpose. And the abstract is usually the summary of the research. So I'm not going to go into the whole research, just pulling out a few pieces for you. A disbelief, if you're unbelievable, a disbelief in alibi is one contributor to wrongful convictions. Many people have been wrongfully convicted. They didn't do the crime. They're truly innocent, but people can't believe their alibis. They don't come across as believable. Sometimes that's because they're a criminal in other aspects, but they did not commit this particular crime, but their lack of believability impacts their conviction. So that there's always contextual issues, and the alibi believability is the thing. Here's another research, another peer-reviewed research for you. This one happens to connect to television. There's a lot of conversation these days about fake news. Well, PSI TV is not in the news space. We're in the edutainment space. So thankfully, we are not likely to be mixed up in that thing, although the smear of fake news on television can sometimes affect PSI TV. But here's another research for you. And this is what it says. It was looking at the Me Too movement It's looking at the economy of believability. Now, the Me Too movement is primarily a women's experience. Women are often seen as unpersuasive. Ladies, listen up. We have got to do a better job of being believable, because generally people see us as unpersuasive. Sometimes it's because we have a more weak or submissive demeanor. I'm not quite sure what it is. I didn't go into the whole research, but it's just saying women are seen as unpersuasive for 3 reasons. Simply because we're women, because through the testimony they seek to bear witness to inconvenient truths, and because they possess less symbolic and material capital than men as witnesses in the court of law. We are not coming across as believable, and we seem to be jumping on inconvenient truths. The labor of being believed is thus usually doubled over, first to cast doubt and eventually detach belief from the established version of reality placed in circulation. And then let me go back and see if I can. The version of reality recognized and authorized as true. So there is a perception of truth. These days, a lot of people talk about your truth, my truth. There's that really what they should be saying is your perception and my perception of truth. There's only one truth, guys. There's only one truth, but there can be various perceptions of truth. Now, my legal background is, my favorite example of this is, if you witness an accident on the street, and you are in the car when the accident happens, you're going to have one perspective of that accident versus someone who is standing 100 feet away, or another person who is looking from an apartment window 100 feet up. So the perspective of your experience is going to be your truth, but there's no such thing as your truth. It's really the truth, and then we have our perspective of the truth. But in that understanding, the established version of reality, we women are not necessarily coming across as believable, and we need to work on that. So when it comes to the area of expertise, when you are trying to be believed on, when you're trying to establish your credibility, your expertise in a space, there are some things. I will not say this list is comprehensive, but it does touch on the major things. When you have a credential, you have a certificate, you have a license, you have a degree, clearly you have expertise in that space. But sometimes you've had a lived experience. So let's say you're talking about sexual abuse, but you have lived the experience of sexual abuse. There's nobody that can question your experience and your credibility in that space, because you've lived the experience. Sometimes you have years of experience, so you don't have a credential. So, for example, there's no license to be a legal assistant or paralegal or anything like that. There are college courses you can take, but there's no licensing to date. And a lot of people, when I was taking my course, there were some people who were taking the course with me. I was brand new to the experience, and some of them had already had 10 years in the legal field, and they were just now getting that credential. So years of experience will establish your expertise, because if a lawyer is trying to determine between somebody who has a fresh certificate and someone who has 20 years and no certificate, they may go for the one with the years of experience. If you've written a book on the matter, okay, one of the things that I love is I have several books to my name, and some of them have reached bestseller status. And even if someone disagrees with me, they're going to have to cite me. They're going to have to quote me. So if you're a published author in that space, or you published an article or a journal, when you're published, that gives you a measure of expertise. Last but not least, proven through testing. If you've taken a test of some sort and scored a certain score that says you passed, you've been tested, like when they do the one where anyway, let's go on. If you've received an award in that space. So a lot of times you have served as a volunteer and you have just done so well for the organization. Maybe you brought in a lot of new sponsors or something. You may get an award for that. I remember when I went to a veterans event where a lot of ex-military had done some artwork and it was on exhibit. I got an award for my contribution to that experience. So an award and a recognition is something. Sometimes your organization has a leaderboard and you've ranked on the leaderboard. That's going to get you some recognition. So when you can say #1 sales agent in the organization, that gives you a lot of leverage, a lot of believability, credibility that you can do what you say you do, or you're credited for the contribution. So, your manager goes to the boss and he says, says to the owner, such and such an idea. Oh, it's a great idea. Yeah, well, Paul in the department gave me the idea. When you get credited for the contribution, that also builds to your believability, your authority, your expertise in the space. Another thing that is so important, especially when going back to the court experience, they're looking for evidence. Now, social proof is another form of evidence, one that I have started to use more recently. So there are lots of experiences that I've had, lots of credentials I've gotten, and I never took the time to get a screenshot. I just enjoyed it for the moment. And now I go back and I'm like, oh, I wish I could prove that I did that. Because sometimes when I just say I did something, it's hearsay. It's my word against somebody else's, or you have to decide if you believe what I said. So social proof is when something is verifiable. Like, I'm a licensed real estate broker. You can look that up. That's verifiable. I have a license as an insurance agent. That's verifiable. You can look that up. I have other credentials. I'm just giving you an example. When you have a receipt that you purchased something, that's verifiable. When you take screenshots, or like a lot of influencers have done, they're doing video of their journeys called vlogs, video logs of their journey. That is proof. And a lot of times you see that in the weight loss space, where they have their before and then they have their after. That's very believable, guys. And that's stuff you should be doing. So as a coach, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as an author, you want to do these things because they're going to help you when you show up to, when people have multiple options and they're trying to decide between all these options. These are the steps that are going to make you stand out. You're going to be more believable. Brand reputation. Here's another one, guys. Brand reputation is so important because sometimes it's, and by the way, let me say this first. Before PSI TV becomes known as PSI TV, for many of you, you're knowing PSI TV because you know Trudy Beerman. So a lot of times you have to remember that the brand sits and starts on the shoulder of the owner. And before Windows was a big deal, Bill Gates had to leverage his relationships, and it was his resume and so forth that built the brand until it just, there will be some people who never know the name of Bill Gates. Same with Apple and so forth. A lot of these things are built on the name of the person. So do not hide behind your brand logo, guys, because it's going to need your, of course, if you have a bad reputation, then maybe okay. But for the most part, your brand is going to start very often with you, your name, the owner, the organization's leader. One of the things that one of my coaches that I was sitting under, he was getting a lot of Fortune 500, Fortune 100 CEOs coming to him because they had no personal brand. So once they got the job, let's say the job as the leader of IBM, the leader of Coca-Cola, one of these big brands, do we even know who they are? If we know them in the capacity of that, if they lose a job, we know the name of Richard Branson and whatever he does. Because we know the name Richard Branson, if he starts a brand new company tomorrow, we are willing to jump on board because the brand started with his name. So you really have to remember that. Now, once the brand is established, the next important thing is brand alignment. We see the fallout from Target and from Bud Light. I'm not going to argue whether on which side or what you believe. The point is they were known for a thing. Their audience base understood their brand to be one thing. And then when they started to take a different angle or message direction, there was a disconnect and they lost their audience base. That is just what brand alignment is. Your brand needs to stand for something and always stand for that thing. And if you deviate from that thing, you're going to lose your audience base. Trust transfer. When there are partnership agreements and two logos or two faces sit side by side. If you don't know the one person, but you know the other, there will be a measure of trust transfer simply because I know and trust this person. I don't know this person at all, but if they're friends or connected in some way, then I'm likely to at least listen to them. There's huge trust transfer. One of the main reasons people come to PSI TV as a guest. Goodwill in the community. This is so important. Sometimes that is how the audience is built. When a company shows up and sponsors the Little League or whatever, and their logo is everywhere, they get to give a speech on the podium for a few minutes. That's one of the reasons why NASCAR cars have sponsored logos, because people are watching NASCAR and they're going to see the logo. And if that car wins, that logo gets a bump in public perception. Goodwill in the community and customer experiences. If you interact with an organization, have a bad experience, bad news travels so fast. So part of your brand is going to be around the customer experience. And when you have a good customer experience, unfortunately, they may not be willing to give that 5-star or the actual testimonial, but at least they're not out there sharing bad news. So, but bad news does travel very fast. And here is another example of that. So this was by Marketing Week, this publication, How Losing Trust Costs Brand Customers and What Marketers Can Do to Prevent It. Customers stop buying from a brand that broke their trust. That's it. So you need to, if you want to be believable, you need to be trustworthy. Okay. And when you do all these things, you are going to have influential reach. You're going to build your influence and you're going to expand your reach. You are going to be the one that others want to hear from. You're going to get the guest spot on the stages, podcast, TV, and, stages are going to want to invite you. They're going to want you to speak to their staff. They're going to want to invite you on because you are doing these things. Yours is going to be the first name that comes to mind for a thing. I've never bought Aflac, but if I ever needed accidental insurance, that's the only one I work on. Their name is stuck in my head as the first one that comes to mind if that was a thing that I needed. You're also going to stand out as the obvious choice from the pack. You understand that you're not the only one doing something. And if you are at the moment, if it's a great idea, there's going to be the quick copycat. So once the competition exists, what's going to make you stand out? You're going to stand out when you are believable, credible, trustworthy. And these are the steps today of being believable. When you're believable, you're going to build your fan base. Okay, you're going to build your fan base. And for those of you watching on television, if you want to scan this barcode, it will help you to connect with me and learn some more about appearing on television. But everywhere else, if you're watching this, if this content was of use to you today, like, comment, share, subscribe, but only if it's of use to you guys. I don't need you to do this just because, do this. I want you to do it if it means something to you. So just as a recap, we went over today, being believable. We went over today, mastering credibility, 5 hacks for establishing credibility in your space, in your niche. We looked at what the Bible said. We looked at some research. We looked at the 5 hacks, which were your expertise, establishing your expertise, the recognition and awards you have, the social proof, you must be verifiable, brand reputation, and the media sets. If the media is touting, sharing the bad news or whatever, it is going to impact your reputation. That's one of the things that's going on with as we build up to the election or any election. The media is going to smear or celebrate you, and that is going to help with your influence and your reach. Trudy Beerman here. Thank you so much for joining in today. And thank you so much for joining in today. And I do look forward to seeing you next Tuesday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. We do this live every week, always sharing on topics that impact your influence and your reach, especially in the space of media. Trudy, nice to... Bye.